Hey, what's up, everybody? Gonna do classic rock reaction, man, and also we're gonna look at an interview. This is featuring John Paul Jones. It's John Paul Jones Month, Artist of the Month, and we've just started off focusing primarily on some of his earlier years in the half end of the month. The latter portion of the month will be featuring his solo post-Zeppelin years. Well, not just solo, but also I know that he was part of the Crooked Vultures. So not just his solo works, but everything post-Zeppelin, pretty much. That's what I'm trying to say. So, man, what I've got for you today is two things. First, we're going to start with a 25-minute interview featuring John Paul Jones just by himself alone. I like that. I don't think I've actually... yeah, I think I have seen an interview with him by himself. And then after that, we're going to go to 1973 doing No Quarter. I believe that's part of The Song Remains the Same. I believe it is. So first off, the interview was provided to me by Henrietta Skolnick. Thanks very much. I appreciate the recommendation and providing all those links. As well, the 1973 No Quarter, I'm not quite sure if it was actually from the Song Remains the Same show, but all the same, it's 73. That was provided by Jeffrey Davis. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, man. I will definitely, especially during the month of John Paul Jones, look at all different renditions of No Quarter, or whatever else is primarily featuring John Paul Jones, but I know that No Quarter definitely is his, you know what I'm saying? So I would definitely check out all of the live versions of No Quarter that there is during this month especially. So with that said, let's do this, man. What we'll do is we'll hit up the interview, do a little pause, check out the link, read some comments, and then we'll hit up 1973's No Quarter. So with that long-ass intro out of the way, let's do this, man. John Paul Jones. This is 2003. Let's get it.
What is it like watching it? It's 10 years of your life.
Yeah.
Or parts of 10 years of your life.
10 years, starting quite a long time ago. Well, yeah. Didn't we look young, I suppose?
Going back to Zeppelin.
Thanks. Great, thank you very much. And we're all young and cute looking and, you know, long hair, shiny, puppy-like. But shit hot too, you know. The music's intense. And
yeah, talented. He knew what they were.
Does it bring back memories?
Well, yes. I mean, especially... I really enjoyed the Albert Hall stuff because it is very early days. And I remember the feeling that we had in those early concerts because we just come back from America and people didn't really know much about us in England. The concerts we'd done were all small pubs and clubs and universities and that. And people used to come by word of mouth. You know, there was no press particularly around. They didn't really know what we were doing. And then we went to America, and then we made a name in America, and then the English press kind of got hold of that. And then when we came back to do the Albert Hall, suddenly everybody went, there's this great American band, and they're coming over, and we can get to see them. You know, and it's like, no, we are English. And, but I suppose the Albert Hall was a sort of, here we are, and this is what we do, and, you know, look out type of thing. There's great swagger. And
would they have caught on?
Comes across on the DVD.
Had they just stayed in England?
So
probably, but much slower. What do you think?
If you compare the feeling of standing there at the Royal Albert Hall to the last episodes of Nebworth from 1979, what's the difference?
Good question.
For me, the more interesting thing is the similarity. The same commitment is there on stage. Once you walk on stage and the music starts, you tend to forget about everything else, and then immediately it's the eye contact and listening for cues and listening and you know, a lot of concentration on stage in a Zeppelin concert. You know, you've got to be ready, and you can't drift off thinking about things.
All of the improv they were
It's
doing.
and that was there right from the first shows right to the end. You can see it in the Nebworth. Everybody was still like Bonzo and I still watching each other and making sure everything was right and right place, and
Great
constant
relationship.
adjusting and musically. I mean, and that was always there. And every concert is given the same commitment and the same weight and the same treatment, whether it's in front of 20 people or 20,000. It's always the same. Everybody tries all the time, and it's not this is doesn't matter what we do here. Or there was always a very professional attitude on stage with Led Zeppelin.
What was the difference between the sessions you did in the studio and and being on stage?
Well, I suppose the audience is the main difference. Instant feedback. In the studio, you can to a certain extent get feedback from other musicians, perhaps, but also in the studio, you're often, it shouldn't be like that, but you're trying to get things right more often because it's going to go down on tape, and you don't want to spoil, especially in the days when bands recorded live, more or less. Not so much in the overdubbing days, but when they recorded live. Because if you make a mistake and it's a really good take, you have to do the whole thing again. So you try not to make a mistake. On stage, you don't care. You can take chances because you know that once it's gone, unless it comes back on a DVD 30 years later, it's gone, And so on stage you can be pushed, you can go further on stage. It's freer, and then plus the feedback from the audience, so that can result in a really, really good concert, really good presentation.
You mentioned before that the press didn't know much about you,
Right?
but then you had a lot of bad press. How come?
I don't know what it was. It was the first bad press took us completely by surprise, which was the Rolling Stone review for the first album. And they said, they mentioned the word hype, and we thought they're listening to the wrong album. This is the wrong band. They've made a mistake with the review, because the one thing that Led Zeppelin was hyped. It wasn't a manufactured band in that sense.
Yeah.
Everybody were really good musicians. We were very dedicated. We weren't pretentious. We weren't pompous. We knew we could do it. We really could do it. We were all.
You're a real deal, they knew it.
And we didn't know who they were talking about. It was like, do they mean us? And I don't know why they may have, presumably had their own reasons. And most bad press, because we didn't do bad shows. The shows were really good. Most bad press seemed to be for some other agenda. You couldn't quite understand it.
Even though you turn out to be bigger than Rolling Stones, Stones still were on the cover of the music magazines.
Maybe it had something to do with it, the fact that they weren't, I don't know, it sounds petty, it can't be the reason, but sometimes I think that because the press didn't really have much of a hand in making us in the first place, perhaps they felt
that's exactly the reason.
That we were standoffish or something. Of course, as soon as we started getting
that's the
bad
only
press,
reason.
Then we were definitely standoffish.
Because you can't say that they weren't talented and they weren't
slag
good.
you off all the time, and then I suppose the rift maybe widened or was cemented. But yes, in some cases it took till 1990 before we got good press.
Wow.
Again, and suddenly we're heroes of the grunge movement. Go figure.
Yeah, their
but
reviews really changed their tune.
Yes, it's hurtful when you know that you did a really good concert and I produced an album for The Mission once.
Yeah, Carved in Sand.
Yeah, no, Children.
Yeah, Children.
Children. And I read a review in New Musical Express or something like that, and the whole review was how they hated Wayne Hussey. There was nothing about the record at all. And I thought, and this is his review, this is his record review. And they didn't, and by the way, there's 10 tracks or something. That's all they said. It's like, why? Why bother? If you don't like the guy, don't write about him.
Yeah.
It's like, it's crazy. But sometimes the press are like that. And yet there's some really good journalists who really understood the music and really got into it and wrote great reviews, you know. Not always good reviews, you know. Sometimes if they thought that night wasn't particularly good, they'd say so. But if it's an honest criticism, you go, yeah, you're right, I know.
How the man who led Zeppelin, how important was Peter Grant?
Very, very important.
Fifth member.
He believed in us right from the word go. He had basically what he did was say that I'll take care of the business and all outside distractions, and I'll keep them away from you. And you just get on with the music. And he said, you do it your way, I'm not going to say anything about it. I'm not going to tell you you should do this or do that, or you're musicians, you do the music. I manage, that's what I do, and that's what he did. He just cleared this big space around us. I was talking to Ahmet Ertegun years later, who said we weren't even allowed to, we were afraid to come near you in case Peter got angry with us, you know. And they weren't at the recordings, you know, studios. They weren't allowed to hear the music until it was absolutely finished. I mean, it was a unique state of affairs. Which very artistically, it was the best you could possibly have.
They were blessed to have a guy like Peter
he was
Grant.
in a way he had loads of innovations when it came to manage a rock and roll band.
Yeah.
What
Yeah, but
was
well,
it?
he had a very simple premise that that the whole business relied on the band, relied on the artist. So all you've got to do is keep the artist happy, and then everything else will fall into place.
Right.
And I don't mean, you know, run and do things for the artist, but make sure that the artist got paid properly for his work, and make sure the artist was treated properly. And then everybody would benefit, you know, the promoters, everybody would benefit. And at the time he thought of this, nobody else was doing it. You know, the artists were getting screwed right, left and centre, and, you know, treated like animals, and everybody was bitching at everybody else, you know. And but he came along and said, look, you know, pay them, treat them properly, put them in good places to play, and, you know, be professional about it. It's quite simple. It wasn't rocket science in that way. He was just brave enough to push it through. There were a lot of people who were used to taking huge rake-offs in concerts, and they didn't like it. But he said, look, if you don't like it, then book another band. You know, he was that confident, and it worked.
Right.
There were good
yeah.
times and bad times, and
That's how good they were.
how did the periods when drugs came in to some members in the band, how did you struggle with that, or how did you manage to
Well,
deal
nobody
with
knew
it?
that much about managing them, as it were, in those days. You know, it wasn't the age of therapy or rehab. That came 20 years too late for us. But as long as it didn't interfere with the music and with stage work, then we kind of had to leave it at that. You know, you can't really go meddling in other people's lives, I suppose. And it didn't interfere with the music and the stage work. I mean, occasionally you get a hangover that would roll into stage, but soon, you know, there was a fairly transparent relationship all the time, and, you know, you'd feel the odd one out if you turned up under the weather in any way, you know, and I don't know, it was kept off stage, I suppose.
You did a lot of work on Improve Your Outdoor, recorded in my hometown, Stockholm.
Right. Yeah.
Wasn't it particularly bad at the time?
It was probably, yes, it probably rose to a head then. But the upshot was that we put out a good album of the people who were there doing it. You know, Robert and I were at rehearsals first. Fortunately, I'd just taken delivery of this big Yamaha organ synthesizer thing. I mean, it was 3 keyboards and full pedal board, and so, as is always the way with me, I was very inspired with this new instrument. So I just started writing stuff, and I had it delivered to the rehearsal rooms, and I was there early playing it.
Yeah.
And then Robert turned up next, and by the time Bonzo and Jimmy had turned up, we kind of finished the album, not written most of the album, and that's how that happened. And it was really done before we went into the studio, and then we went to the studio and put it down. But not much changed from the rehearsal to the studio. Whereas normally the writing process with Led Zeppelin is that an idea would start with any member of the band, perhaps, and then everybody would work on that idea, and became Zeppelin property, as it were.
How did you feel, John Paul, when everything ended, and especially ended in the way it did?
Well, it was terrible. It was a terrible shock. We knew immediately that was the end of Zeppelin. John Bonham wasn't the drummer of Led Zeppelin, he was a quarter of Led Zeppelin. And you couldn't just say, oh, get another drummer. You know? A, you'd never find anybody like him, and B, it wouldn't be the same band in the slightest. You know, it wasn't a song-based band. The way the music was created was sort of on a continual basis, and on stage there's a lot of improvisation, and but even in the studio, the way it was played was what it was about. It wasn't an arrangement of a song where you could have any musicians come in and play and it would sound still like the same song. But unfortunately it happened at a time when we'd gone through perhaps the lowest period at the end of the 70s. And Robert had lost his son, and I mean it wasn't good times for us. But then after Nebworth there was this new optimism in the band, and we were rehearsing for an American tour when John died, and so there was a feeling that, you know, it's 1980, new decade, and you know this, and punk had come and gone a bit, and so now we were all a bit leaner and, you know, musically a bit more sharper again, and then it just all stopped, you know. But it was terrible.
As
So
being one
into the
quarter
80s.
of the band, as you say, that John was, is it possible for you to play again together?
What, 3/4? You could call it 3/4, I suppose.
No quarter.
After no quarter, 3/4. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe, but it wouldn't be Led Zeppelin. There's no way it would be Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not considering
I had
Jason
one more
at
question
that time.
about. Or do we have? Yeah. One of your biggest songs, or I mean, one of the most played songs of yours is "Stairway to Heaven."
Mm-hmm.
How do you? What does that song mean to you?
Well, it has. It's kind of a Led Zeppelin sampler, isn't it? It has everything that we do in it somewhere. You know, it starts off quietly with the acoustic instruments, and then it goes into a sort of mellowish, almost jazzy vibe with keyboards and that, and then the rock and roll starts. You know, the solos, and the song has a really nice dynamic, long dynamic, and with a bit in the middle, and then there's changes gear towards the end. I mean, it's got everything, really. It's just, I think it's good. And the whole, the mystical lyrics, you know, that nobody's quite sure of what they mean,
But
including Robert.
Robert Plant doesn't seem to like it.
No, he doesn't. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Maybe
He says
he
it's
knows what the lyrics
just a
mean.
song
He
for the
doesn't like
time.
notes. I don't know why. I think it's good. You know, maybe he feels he's sung it too often. I'm not
Yeah.
sure why he doesn't like it, but you're right, he doesn't. But I disagree with him. I think it's good.
It was just another song.
Did you feel at the time that this is a possible milestone of rock?
I don't know. I don't think in terms of milestones of rock myself. It was obviously a good, you know, Page had this idea of this long number that had different changes in it. And it was obviously going to be something good and something very interesting, something not done before really anywhere else. So I can't think of anything else that it was like at the time. And it certainly when you finish a track, you know how successful they are as to what you were aiming for, as to what was finally realized, which is really the only way you can judge music, recording music especially. And it was very successful. It did all the things we wanted with the arrangement and everything else. You know, as I said, it had a great dynamic and the solo at the end and then the final chorus. It just, you know, it was great pop music apart from anything else, never mind rock.
Did that capture that song, this like from the very beginning with "Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You"?
That was similar, yeah. That was probably
with the light side and the dark side, the bluesy side and the folk
Page always
side.
had that in mind when, but he would also. I mean, we were all good musicians, and so we knew the value of dynamic and light and shade, you know, to set one off against the other. Which is why we didn't sound like other bands, because other bands seem to just do light or shade, never, you know, in the same song. You have a slow song or a fast one. Or
that's why I like them so much.
To me,
the number one thing I like about these guys.
That's boring. Plus, you ignore really valuable musical dynamics,
changing
et
the
cetera,
sound.
et cetera, et cetera. But Page always had this. He used to work out a lot of the heavy riffs on the acoustic guitar. And so it was kind of interchangeable, and all you had to do was orchestrate the guitar lines, and suddenly it was.
But it's fascinating to have an idea which comes from one song, which you develop into all that you did.
Yes.
Because you brought in so much into it with different musical
but also
styles.
we were able to bring so much into it. We were all very able musicians with wide influences and wide abilities in different sorts of music, and so we could make that variation. I mean, there's some bands simply can't do it. You know, you don't know what to play.
They can wake up in the morning and flip a coin to decide which way to go.
Yeah, it's a big favourite of mine, Kashmir.
Yeah,
well, I didn't
it's great to have that.
But Kashmir was a great showpiece as a number. It was just very theatrical and the grand gesture, and it was. But then so was When the Levee Breaks in its own way, you know. But just less orchestral, I suppose, more bluesy. But great atmosphere, especially on the record. The atmosphere on the Levee is amazing.
What's your own favourite?
I have lots of favourites, all for different reasons.
If you just, you know, the Desert Island thing.
Hard to say. Ooh, the Desert Island one. I know Kashmir is pretty good. But then things like What Is and What Should Never Be it's really good. The way that the rhythm comes and the drums come in. When the drums come, it's just magic, that sudden changing of gear.
All I have to ask you also about all the rumors about the great myth and legend about Led Zeppelin as being the Crusaders who came and smashed hotels and
you have a few parties and they remind you of it in 30 years' time. I mean, you know.
No kidding.
But I mean,
you've got nothing else to talk about.
Come on, a few parties. Didn't John Bonham come to your hotel room door once, and he was taking a big sword and smashed the door and dragged you out of bed and left you in the hotel?
Maybe he did. But does that make him any less of a drummer? I mean, or a man? So I didn't notice. So the funny thing was that they looked at somebody else's room and said, "Oh, and this room's smashed up as well." And we said, "No, that belongs to the road manager. His room always looks like that."
To Richard Cole.
Richard Cole. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's okay, that one.
So at the time when all this happened, you didn't feel that there was something strange going on?
There wasn't anything strange. Every band used to. The first hotel room I ever saw broken up was Herman's Hermits.
I wouldn't even waste time with questions like
in
that.
Germany. Peter Noon smashed something. I was shocked. This sort of smiley guy. Oh, okay. But
Herman's
that
Hermits.
wasn't the interesting thing in Led Zeppelin for me, I have to say.
Why do those things happen? I mean, like,
well, you know,
of course.
well, especially in the early days, you'd
Move along, man.
you'd do a show, you'd play for 2 hours or something like that, and you'd be like this, You come back to the hotel and the town is closed. The town closed round about the third number, you know. Kansas City shut, or wherever it was. Cincinnati, Ohio, I mean, I think it's still shut, Cincinnati, you know.
Adrenaline rush.
And you just, high spirits, there's no food, there's nothing to do, the television, 2 channels have all gone off, you know.
So there's a practical side of it.
There is a practical side of it, you know, there's a lot of energy to explode. You've got to wind down somehow, and sometimes we wound down noisier than others.
And of course, I mean, like when you came to the US, you were quite young at the time as well, but there was of course that feeling, but also the feeling of being number one, which you, the huge success of yours.
Yeah. But why would that have anything to do
No,
with
but I mean, like,
else?
does it
all
give
bands
you
is the party.
Yeah,
well,
but
we did
not
it
all
because we
bands
thought we could.
Not all bands are number one. You think it's
No, but you don't, you know. You don't go
being on a high,
wild
being
just because
elated.
you feel you're number one.
How was the feeling of being number one?
Well, I felt I was kind of slightly removed from the feeling of, you know, you read about the concert and you think, that's great, you know, wow, this band did really well.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't feel it's you somehow. Because the feeling on stage was always the same, as I said, from the early small shows to the big ones. And so you didn't really feel that you know, we were on any sort of pedestal or any, you know, any deity or anything like that. It was just, oh, you liked it? Okay, great.
True
But someone
musicians,
came
it's
up-
all about the
Come up to,
music.
hey John Paul, you're bigger than the Beatles.
Well, I'd say they were a bit silly. That wasn't true, though, was it? And the Beatles were household names. They had hit singles. They were on TV. They made films. You know, we couldn't really be. But in the rock world, I suppose, yeah, I suppose we were. You know,
Big influence, man.
Thank you very much,
Gotta own it.
keep it.
John Paul. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's great talking to you. And by the way, nice production work also with the Mission album.
All right. Thank you.
At the time, I interviewed both Craig Adams and Wayne Hussey.
All right.
So I just got the
Wayne.
title wrong.
Yes. Right. That was the one after.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Okay. Right.
And good luck
Thank
with
you.
your own
Was that fun?
further or forthcoming solo
Right.
album.
Good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
We'll come and see you again. I'll try and play in Sweden.
Yeah, you should.
Can't be that hard.
That's quite a few of us who would like to listen.
Yeah. Okay. Although for when we did the In Through the Outdoor,
Yeah,
I kept waking up late, and it was in December or something. So it was like 3 weeks. We never saw the daylight at all.
No, and you stayed home like the weekdays and then you went home on
On the weekend, I think, yeah. For the rest of it, that's what I had lots of pretty farmers.
Yeah?
Transcript fatal.
Oh, Fritz Fatal, you remember that
Huge
one?
amounts,
Oh
yes.
shit, that's
I know.
disgusting.
Kept the cameras rolling. Right on, right on. So, good interview. He lingered on a very irrelevant question a little bit too long, but hey, it's all good. Good interview. So, man, that's John Paul Jones. Very, very nice, very personable, very humble. A true musician. He is in it for what they can create collectively. He's in it because of that magic elixir when the four of them do their thing and what they create. Everything else is a distant second for him. You can tell. And I bet you if you were to sit all four of them down and ask them something to that effect, they would all give you the same answer. It's how we jam, man. It's what we do together. It's the sound that we create, the signature sound. It's unlike nothing else, you know, that's what they would say. And that's why we dig them so much, man. Fantastic. So, you know what I want to do? I want to go to the source that Henrietta sent me and kind of get a little bit of context in regards to this interview where he was, what he was working on at the time, and stuff like that. Maybe if we can find it, and what some of the fans are saying about it. So let's check it out, man. This is from Mark Zepp. His channel is called Mark Zepp. He's got 35,000 subscribers, and his caption says, "This is the raw, unedited interview for a Swedish TV show, May 13, 2013. And so let's read what some of the people are saying, man. "This man is the reason I ever picked up a Fender Jazz bass. I met him in '94, given him the opportunity to tell me this and thank him for it. He is the humblest, most gracious person I ever encountered. The only thing better than his musicianship is his humanity. Thank you, John Paul Jones, for being you." Right on, man. Some good thumbs up there. Finally, an interviewer that asks interesting questions, and John Paul Jones gives great, honest answers. He really is a class act and a quarter of the greatest band in history. Yeah, he gives really good answers, and I like the fact that it was just him, and he was taking his time. He would clear his throat, have a sip of water, and he would just expand into things. So that was really cool, and that's the way to conduct interviews, man. A really, really good setting. This interview is amazing. I have so much respect for John Paul Jones and his honesty and humbleness. He gives it to you straight, doesn't avoid or lead questions astray. So you're left confused, so that you're not left confused. And he's like, ahem, Jimmy. And he sticks to the talking point about the music. He also has such a respect for his past band members, even though they treated him like shit sometimes. One of the most down-to-earth guys in rock. Treating him like shit, obviously he's poking at Page and Plant about going on doing the Page and Plant thing without even letting him know about it. Yes, not their finest hour. We forgive him, but not their finest hour. Jones said it perfectly. John Bonham wasn't the drummer of Led Zeppelin, he was a quarter of it. That right there shows how much respect there was for one another in Led Zeppelin. Absolutely, they were a unit. He and Page were geniuses together. What a great decision by Page to get Jones as his first mate. Wonderful interview. He has wonderful sense of humor. You have a few parties and they remind you of it 30 years later. Yeah. Cincinnati shut down after the third number. What else were we going to do? Yeah, that is funny. Yeah, but you see it through his eyes. You understand it a little bit more. And back in the day, he was saying, yeah, man, we didn't have a lot of the whole rehab thing. We didn't have a lot of guidance. You were just making up. You were your own conductor in life and stuff like that. When you're really, really super young, first time in America, you're in your early 20s, you don't know shit, and it's such a big world, big ocean. Yeah, you're gonna go off a little bit. Absolutely. An absolutely gifted bassist. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Jonesy. To the uninitiated, he's probably the least known member of Led Zeppelin, but he was the backbone that made those songs come alive and allow you to feel the music. Absolutely. I call him the glue, the silent assassin. But not so silent. I'm always aware of what he's doing. Every single song, it's like my mind splits into four, and I'm tracking what each one of them is doing. So I was always very, very present and aware of what he was up to. Even from the very, very first time I did a Led Zeppelin reaction. Since I've been loving you, and I really started to listen and hone in. And for the first month or so, I was really a big fan of his, and I was still trying to struggle as to which musician I liked best and that sort of thing. But at some point in time, he was my favorite, you know what I mean? John is such an awesome person. I have such respect for him, and I think he can just be so hilarious sometimes with some of the little things he says. Legend. Jonesy is a class act, always was, possibly the most gifted musician in the band. I wouldn't argue that at all. Let's read one more. There's no hyperbole, I hate that word, in this statement. Led Zeppelin consisted of 4 groundbreaking revolutionary musical virtuosos. Given that indisputable fact, John Paul Jones is arguably the most gifted all-around musician. I wouldn't argue that. That's quite an honor when you're talking about the most astonishingly talented band that rock ever produced. Yeah, in their own right, individually, these guys were remarkable, right? And I would go and I would check out each individual one of them based on what they're doing. And you put all four of them together, the shit is no longer fair, right? That's just how it is, man. All right, so, oh my gosh, hang on, I gotta read this one. Tammy Parrish Miller. This lady is one of my oldest subscribers. She's not old, but she's been around the longest. She's been a patron subscriber, and she's been always present. I gotta read what Tammy has to say. Tammy Parrish Miller. Jonesy never got enough FaceTime in my estimation. This man was and is so full of talent, and I'm always wishing I could see more of him on film to see what his fingers were doing. There is a scene on stage in The Song Remains the Same movie where he and Bonzo were playing and smiling at each other. I remember that very scene, and it's coming from my favorite Led Zeppelin song performed live, Dazed and Confused. And in the middle of it, John is following Jimmy, and they're going into a couple of triple bangs, and John is waiting for Jimmy to exit and going to the next section, but Jimmy is hanging in that part, and John is kind of shaking his head like, what's this guy doing? Are we going to move along? And so Jonesy looks over at him, and he knows what's happening, and he kind of gives John a smile that, yeah, that's Jimmy. Good moment. She continues to say, that's one of my favorite parts. It's really awesome to hear his takes on all of the different songs. Still love these guys after all these years. Who wouldn't? Great interview. Great guy. Gotta add that Peter Grant certainly had their backs. He was balls to the wall. Peter Grant. Right on. Tammy, I've never heard you say anything vulgar. Balls to the wall? That's the most vulgar thing that I've ever heard you say. This is something more in the ballpark of Amy Brooks. Amy Brooks is the lady version of me, man. She's got some serious potty mouth going on. All right, so great comments though, Tammy. Thank you very much. I'm gonna end it there, man. And let's go and check out our next shot here, man. That being 1973. No Quarter. I'm looking forward to that. So, I'm pretty sure it's from The Song Remains the Same. We'll see. Led Zeppelin, 1973. No Quarter. Let's get it.
This is called No Quarter.
Best audio mix. One thing about No Quarter Live is I feel that Jimmy's solo guitar work is among the best I've ever heard where Led Zeppelin is concerned. What do you think of that? No Quarter Live, I'm thinking, of course, The Song Remains the Same. If this is indeed the exact same, I'm not sure yet. Yeah, it's the same. Fingers crossed, y'all, that this makes it onto YouTube. I don't know. This song is the song that made me decide to go all the way back to the beginning
Close the door, put out the
and do
light.
every single song.
You know they won't be home tonight. Oh, oh. The snow falls hard, and don't you know? The winds of Thor are blowing cold. They wearing steel that's bright and true. Oh, 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 to build a dream for me and you. Ah, they choose a path where no one. They hold no power. Oh, oh, they ask no quarter. Whoa, yeah, whoa, yeah, whoa,
A little overdubbing going on there. Filling in some space, obviously. Excellent. Here comes one of the best guitar solos, I think, from Page. Not quite yet. all these years. Good on you, John. Concert bids. Excellent. I love the extended instrumentals of this tune. This particular concert.
Walking side by side with death. The devil mocks their every step. The snow drives back the foot that's slow. The dogs of doom are howling more. Carry news of musket through to build a dream for me and you. Oh, yes they do. They choose a path where no one. They won't conquer. They ask no quarter. Oh, what misery without quarter. Oh, the pain without quarter. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, give me going. Oh, give me. Gumbo Jones piano.
Right on. There you go, folks. I will never tire of this particular song, that particular concert, for so many reasons. The great instrumentation, that song, No Quarter, and the Rain song. I've got a couple of songs that I feel personally that I like the live version more than the studio version. I also like, oh my gosh, the song remains the same. So some songs, let's use this song as an example. The raw concert atmospheric vibe seems to really, really work best with this song. The studio version is great, but this live cut, man, really gets me every single time. In this particular concert, I don't know. I'm guessing that it's probably the best rendition live of No Quarter. Prove me wrong if you think so. But yeah, man, I really, really love it. And like I said, I think that Jimmy's playing in this, his guitar work in this is fantastic, man. Where it comes to live guitar playing, this is number 2 to Jimmy's guitar playing in Dazed and Confused from the same concert, in my opinion, live, right? Of course, my favorite song from them will probably always be Since I've Been Loving You. Maybe it's because it was my first. No, it's more than that. It's just, I don't know, man. It's just my song, And you guys have heard the story about me listening to that. It was a very, very well handpicked, chosen song. And at the time, my friends were trying to shift my focus, shift my energy, shift my attention, shift everything. And that song they brought to my attention, and they said, do a reaction to this, play this, do your whole review thing of this song. Stop focusing on the anti-war for a second, just to do this. And after that, you can go back to your anti-war thing. But yeah, man, I'm telling you, that was my introduction to Led Zeppelin. I would say the real Led Zeppelin. Not that the songs that I heard from them before that wasn't the real, but it introduced me to, or it made me open my mind to the fact that, yeah, these guys were more than just Stairway to Heaven, Rock and Roll, Black Dog, and Immigrant Song. That's what I knew. And it wasn't enough for me to declare that, yeah, these guys are, among the best of all time yet. I didn't know that yet. But once I got introduced to Since I've Been Loving You, and then along the way realized that they covered some incredible blues, and then when I got to this song and Rain Song, and I realized that they covered what I call the fantasy far escape songs, man, I was in. I was like, okay, after I listened to this, I said that I was going to go all the way back and start from the beginning, because at this point, the first couple of months into my channel, I was just basically listening to whatever you guys were sending me. Oh, listen to this Zeppelin song, listen to this Zeppelin song. And then finally this came along, and yo, man, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go all the way back, and I'm going to listen to every single Led Zeppelin song, every single album, both studio stuff and then live stuff, because I was learning along the way that, okay, their studio sound versus their live sound, it's two different animals completely. So you got a long way to go. That's when I was starting to realize, because I made some dumb assumptions when I started with Led Zeppelin. I thought that after a few quads, I'd move on. Oh man, it's so embarrassing to admit that shit. But yeah, that's what I thought. Not knowing that just a couple of months later, my goal of 10,000 subscribers would immediately be reached. And because I had this thing in my mind that by now, 3 years in, I would be hitting 10,000 subscribers. But when this Led Zeppelin factor kicked into my channel, I hit that shit in 6 months. I wasn't ready. And so with the whole thing that I was doing, I realized that, oh my gosh, I'm not just going to do this on a casual basis. I'm going to be hitting up reactions, including Led Zeppelin stuff, a couple of times a week. So it became almost like a full-time hobby. Incredible how one element can just completely arrest and change your life in a way. This has been a life-changing journey for me, if you guys don't know it. And so the Led Zeppelin factor has been a very, very huge part of this channel. And more than, I would say 50% of this channel's subscriptions and the success of the channel came by way of Zeppelin. So I'm not going to front, man, let me tell you. Anyway, fantastic song. A really excellent gentleman at the core of this song, John Paul Jones. And again, it always goes back to the great contributions of each particular member and the importance of each particular member. And he said it best in the interview, man, that, they're all a quarter of the whole. And it isn't just a matter of a bassist, a drummer, a singer, or a guitarist, man. They're a part of a quarter of a whole. And so, once John passed, that was it. They couldn't continue the way they were because the sound would never be the same. Never be the same for the better. And it didn't matter who you brought in to fill that void, even his son, right? It's the closest that you can ever get, I think. But yeah, man, even his son, what do you think of that? Let me ask you this question. I already know what the answer is, but I'm asking you anyway because there's going to be varying opinions on it. When Jason came into his adulthood, his age of being an adult, and he was seasoned as a player and that sort of thing, I would imagine that's probably in the mid-late 80s. Of course, the guys weren't ready, mentally. Maybe Jimmy was. Out of the three remaining members, maybe Jimmy was probably the more ready one. But do you think that if they, let's say, got together with Jason in the 80s, once he's an adult, he's mature and everything, that they would have gone back into the whole Zeppelin mode again? Do you think that they could have captured a little bit of that? Because why I'm asking is that it would have been a number of years, not too far away from John's passing, so they probably still at that time they were young and they still had a lot of creativity and stuff like that. They had a plan for the 80s, and so let's say by 1990, if Jason had come in, do you think that they would have still been just as stellar? Answer that question for me. I guess that's my question. It's a very interesting one. It just came to mind. But anyway, refocusing back on John Paul Jones. Yeah, so what I'm going to do here, man, going forward with John Paul Jones is a little bit more. And I think what I'll try and do, because I've got a lot of recommendations, is mix it up a little bit. For example, like a little bit from Henrietta and a little bit from Jeffrey this time. And I'll probably do a little bit like that in the next couple of days. Once we get to the middle portion of the month, then I'll be focusing on his post-Zeppelin stuff. But I think that's what I'll do to get as much in. And it's a really good balance between, let's say, interviews, rockumentaries, and maybe some live performances. There's some timestamps of some of his good works and stuff like that. So those are all of the things that I'm sourcing and what I'll be showing you in the next couple of days. Anyway, man, it's one of my favorite live songs and live performances from them. Fantastic song, and I think that it's at its very, very best live. What do you think of that? Let me know. Okay, y'all. So, coming up tomorrow, today is Saturday, the 8th. Tomorrow is the 9th. It's Jimmy's birthday, so I'll be doing something with Jimmy. I'm not quite sure yet, and if you feel like you want to send me something for Jimmy, send it to me. But I'll see what I've got where it comes to recommendations and stuff like that. I gather it all, put it all in a folder, that sort of thing. So I'll be doing a tribute to Jimmy. Jimmy's 78th birthday's tomorrow. So this was excellent. Thank you very much again, Henrietta and Jeffrey. And look for my Jimmy birthday tribute tomorrow as well. Just so you guys know, if you haven't been around for the last couple of days, I started a new channel. And the new channel is based on me doing some readings of inspiration and just promoting some good positive energy. I'll leave a link in the description. You can go check it out. And whenever you need to recharge, relax, chill, and unwind, that's what I call the channel. You can definitely go and check out some sort of inspirational reading that I'll be doing. I've already got a lot of people sent me some really, really good stuff. There's an email that I've attached, and I'll also attach it in the bottom section, that you can just send me a little bit of your favorite verse of whatever the case is, whether it's something that you wrote yourself or from a favorite book or whatever kind of source that you've got. And as long as it's uplifting and positive, I'll definitely do a read for it. Anyways, that's my little plug. So, great interview. I really liked it, and I like the fact that he was just by himself alone. You know, when you've got another member sitting next to him, you know, it can be distracting because you want to hear what he's got to say. But, you know, usually it's the more talkative one that's doing the talking, you know, so it's great to have him by himself. So I'd like to see more interviews like that with John Paul Jones in the next couple of days. So if there are more interviews like this where it's just him, send it to me. I'll definitely check it out. Anyway, have a good one, y'all. Take care, and I'll see you for Jimmy's birthday tomorrow. Peace.